Adam Schiff stepped onto the platform believing his elite education and polished rhetoric would easily overpower an ex-police officer from Queens. Dan Bongino viewed him as a habitual deceiver, who had dedicated 3 years to promoting the Russia deception while leaking secrets and trying to censor dissenters. Schiff had previously targeted him on CNN, labeling him a hazardous conspiracy theorist who deserved to be removed from all media platforms. That turned out to be a massive error in judgment, because the ensuing events would turn Schiff into the Internet's most ridiculed political figure. This clash had been brewing for many months, as tension mounted with every media appearance where Schiff casually cited Bongino as a primary source of unchecked misinformation. It began with minor comments when Schiff answered inquiries about social media rules by claiming individuals like Dan Bongino necessitated stricter oversight and fact-checking. The situation quickly intensified when Schiff appeared on CNN explicitly to brand Bongino as a conspiracy theorist whose podcast disseminated perilous falsehoods. He subsequently went on MSNBC to imply that networks hosting Bongino should reconsider whether they wished to be complicit in spreading disinformation. He was effectively demanding that Bongino be deplatformed and erased from the public discourse entirely. Bongino retaliated on his own show by methodically dissecting Schiff's extensive history of fabrications and deceit. He highlighted 3 years of claims regarding Trump-Russia collusion evidence that never actually appeared, and the leaking of classified data to sympathetic news outlets. He pointed to the Hunter Biden laptop, which Schiff dismissed as Russian propaganda, but which ultimately proved to be entirely authentic. Bongino also noted the invented version of Trump's call to Ukraine that Schiff read into the congressional record as if it were fact. During every episode, Bongino played clips of Schiff lying and contrasted them with the truth, while asking how such a person could accuse others of spreading misinformation. Yet Schiff continued to escalate the feud by making his attacks increasingly personal and vicious toward his rival. He was no longer simply disputing Bongino's analysis, but was instead attacking his character and questioning his right to have a platform at all. Eventually, an individual with financial means and a flair for the dramatic organized what they termed the accountability debate. Schiff and Bongino were set to meet face-to-face in front of a live audience at a neutral location. There would be no moderator to shield either of them from the other during the exchange. It was simply going to be 2 men standing on stage with their respective records exposed. Schiff accepted the challenge because he was genuinely convinced of his own intellectual dominance and superiority. He possessed degrees from Stanford and Harvard Law and had served in Congress for more than 2 decades. He had served as the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee during crucial periods. He had led innumerable hearings and conducted thousands of media interviews and prosecuted legal cases before entering politics. He knew exactly how to portray himself as the mature adult in the room who handled complex issues seriously. While he believed his opponents dealt in simple conspiracies, he viewed Bongino as just another loud talk radio host who would crumble under pressure. Schiff thought he would wither under scrutiny from someone with legitimate credentials, but he fundamentally misunderstood Dan Bongino's indifference to looking sophisticated. Bongino did not care about appearing measured because he was a former NYPD detective who had worked real cases on dangerous streets. He had also been a Secret Service agent who literally took a bullet intended for someone else during his protection detail. He had stood guard willing to die to protect presidents he politically disagreed with because duty came first. He had investigated actual felonies and genuine criminals rather than focusing on political adversaries. Most significantly, Bongino had spent months gathering every lie Schiff had ever told and every leak he had orchestrated. For every instance where Schiff was caught fabricating or twisting the truth, Bongino had receipts and video evidence ready. He possessed transcripts, congressional records, and Inspector General reports alongside Schiff's own words that condemned him. Bongino had absolutely no intention of being polite or diplomatic during the encounter. The auditorium was filled with over 800 people, divided almost equally between Bongino's supporters and Schiff's fans. One side consisted of working-class Americans and veterans who never trusted Schiff, while the others expected a Harvard lawyer to dismantle a podcaster. The atmosphere inside the room was electric with anticipation. The audience had not gathered for a nuanced policy discussion or debate. They were present because they wanted to witness a fight. Schiff emerged first, appearing every bit the polished congressman he was known to be. He wore an expensive suit that fit perfectly, and his hair was styled with exact precision. He wore a slight smile that implied he was amused to lower himself to this level for the public good. He waved to his portion of the crowd before taking his position at the podium. He arranged his notes with careful attention to detail as he waited. Bongino walked out half a minute later to a thunderous roar from his supporters. At 48 years old, with a thick Queen's accent and a cop's bearing, he wore a suit that was clearly off the rack. He looked exactly like a street cop who had found success later in life. His entrance possessed none of the polish or refinement that Schiff displayed. He walked straight to his podium without waving or acknowledging the crowd beyond a brief nod. He immediately began sorting through papers covered in highlighting and handwritten scribbles. He resembled a detective who had been awake all night building a case and was ready to present it to a jury. The moderator attempted to set ground rules, but both men largely ignored the instructions. This was not destined to be a structured debate with timed responses and careful moderation. It was clearly going to be a brawl. The moderator asked Congressman Schiff to explain his concerns regarding Mr. Bongino's credibility given his recent attacks. Schiff utilized the smooth voice he had perfected over decades of television appearances. He thanked the moderator and stated it was important to address the spread of disinformation in the media ecosystem. He claimed that Mr. Bongino had used his platform to disseminate conspiracy theories about various topics. Before he could finish, "Let me stop you right there." Bongino's voice cut through Schiff's measured cadence like a chainsaw. His Queen's accent was thick, and his delivery was rapid-fire with an aggressive tone. He challenged Schiff to discuss conspiracy theories by starting with the biggest political hoax in American history. He slammed a thick folder onto the podium and declared they would review the record. "We are going to examine this point by point, Congressman, and you will answer for every lie." Schiff tried to maintain his composure and asked for a civil discussion, but Bongino refused. "You called for me to be deplatformed and went on CNN calling me dangerous. You suggested I should not be allowed to have a podcast, so we are not doing civil today. We are doing truth instead, so let us begin immediately." The moderator had completely lost control of the situation already. Bongino was not waiting for permission or following any specific format. He was prosecuting a case, and Adam Schiff was about to become the defendant. Bongino opened his folder and displayed a timeline on screens around the venue. It showed dates from March 2017 to March 2019, with quotes from Schiff claiming he had seen evidence of collusion. Bongino pointed out that in March 2017, Schiff went on Meet the Press and claimed more than circumstantial evidence existed. Remember that Schiff started to speak, but Bongino was already playing the video clip on the screens. Schiff's own voice from 2 years ago confidently told Chuck Todd that he had seen evidence. Bongino repeated the date, March 2017, and then noted that in April 2017, Schiff said it again on CNN. He noted that in May 2017 on MSNBC, Schiff made the same claim regarding evidence beyond circumstance. Every month for 3 years, June, July, August, and September, Schiff went on television and told the American people he had proof. Bongino's voice became louder and faster and more intense as he continued. You were the ranking member and then chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. You said you had seen the evidence and you had access to classified briefings. You told America repeatedly that you had proof Trump colluded with Russia. He pulled out the Mueller report and held it up for everyone to see. Mueller finished his investigation in March 2019 after spending $30 million and employing 19 lawyers and 40 FBI agents. After 2 years and hundreds of witnesses, Bongino opened to a marked page to read what they found. The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government. He looked up and declared there was no collusion found. After you spent 3 years telling America you had evidence, Mueller spent $30 million and found nothing. Schiff tried to interrupt to say the report documented contacts, but Bongino shouted him down. It documented no collusion, and Bongino's voice rose to nearly a shout as he accused Schiff of lying. For 3 years, you went on every network and looked into cameras. You told the American people you had evidence, and you were lying the entire time. He played a prepared montage showing clip after clip of Schiff on different networks. On different dates, the message was always the same regarding seeing evidence that was more than circumstantial. He claimed he could not discuss classified information, but over and over his own words and lies were broadcast. Bongino demanded to know where the evidence was that Schiff claimed to see. Mueller could not find it after 2 years of investigation because it did not exist. You lied to the American people for 3 years about the most serious allegation you can make. You claimed a president was a traitor working with a foreign power. Schiff attempted his polished response by stating the Mueller report detailed extensive contacts. Bongino shot back immediately that contacts are not collusion. You said collusion, and you said conspiracy, and you said you had evidence. You didn't say there were contacts to investigate. You said you saw evidence of criminal conspiracy. Show us the evidence, Congressman, and tell us where it is. The audience was completely silent as they watched Schiff squirm under the barrage. He tried several different verbal escape routes by talking about the seriousness of Russian interference. He spoke about counterintelligence concerns and the importance of investigation. But each time, Bongino cut him off and brought him back to the central question. Where was the evidence of collusion you claim to have seen? Finally, Schiff tried a different defense by suggesting reasonable people can look at the same information and draw conclusions. Bongino cut him off flatly, saying no, because Schiff didn't say he thought reasonable people might conclude that. You said, "I have seen evidence," which is a direct quote. You claim to have seen proof, so either you show it or you were lying. He leaned forward on his podium with his intensity ratcheting up. You are calling me a conspiracy theorist, but I am a former federal agent who knows what evidence looks like. You pushed the biggest conspiracy theory in modern American history and lied about having evidence. You destroyed people's lives, including Michael Flynn, who lost everything based on this hoax. Roger Stone and Carter Page had their lives ruined because of the lies you perpetuated. Bongino's voice got even more passionate, and his Queen's accent got thicker. You have never apologized or admitted you were wrong. You never said you should not have claimed to have evidence you did not have. You just moved on to the next lie, and now you call me dangerous. That is rich, Congressman. And Schiff tried one more time to regain control. He started to say, if we look at the totality, but Bongino was having none of it. The totality is that you lied for 3 years to the American people about collusion that never existed. You want to talk about my credibility? But that is the most hypocritical thing I have ever heard. He shuffled his papers aggressively and said they were just getting started because that was just lie number one. 3 years of claiming evidence resulted in the Mueller report finding no collusion. You never apologized and never admitted you lied. Bongino asked people to comment "liar" if they remembered the Russia hoax. He didn't wait for Schiff to respond before launching his next attack. He pulled out a different folder tabbed with different colored sticky notes. "Let's talk about classified information, Congressman, because I know a little something about that. I was Secret Service, and I protected President Obama with top-secret clearance. You know what happens if you leak classified information." And he didn't wait for an answer. "You go to federal prison. That is exactly what happens. If I had leaked what I knew about presidential movements or security protocols, I would have been arrested. I would have been prosecuted and sent to prison because that is the standard for everyone." Bongino looked directly at Schiff and said, "Everyone except you, apparently." He opened the folder to go through Schiff's greatest hits as the Intelligence Committee's biggest leaker. In March 2017, you went into a classified briefing about Russia. 2 hours later, CNN had the story with details only someone in that room would know. Sources say it is you, and Schiff started to object, but Bongino rolled over him. In April 2017, there was closed-door testimony from Sally Yates in a classified session. The next day, the Washington Post had quotes from the testimony, and sources pointed to your office. In May 2017, there was a classified briefing on Flynn, and hours later, it was leaked to the press. Every month from June through August, classified sessions were followed immediately by leaks. He pulled out a timeline showing the pattern of classified meetings followed within hours by media reports. The correlation was undeniable, and you were the Intelligence Committee chairman. You had a responsibility to protect classified information, but instead, you weaponized it. You leaked selectively to shape narratives and gave classified details to CNN and MSNBC to damage opponents. Bongino's passion was building as he spoke about taking an oath as Secret Service. "I meant it, and I protected information even when releasing it might have been politically convenient. That is what integrity means, and that is what honor means." He pointed at Schiff and said, "You took that same oath, but violated it repeatedly for political gain. For CNN hits, you leaked and leaked and leaked, and you faced no consequences." Schiff attempted to defend himself with legal language about the difference between leaking and authorized disclosure. He spoke about committee prerogatives and the public interest. But Bongino cut through it all. "Don't lawyer talk me, because I was a federal agent, and I know the rules. You do not get to selectively leak classified information just because it helps your narrative. That is not oversight. That is corruption." And he pulled out specific examples. Flynn transcripts were leaked, and you were one of the few people who had access. They ended up in the Washington Post, along with testimony from Fusion GPS principals. It was a classified session leaked immediately, and your fingerprints were all over it. His voice got more intense as he asked what really got to him. "You leaked to damage Flynn, Stone, Page, and Manafort, regular Americans destroyed by your leaks. But when Devin Nunes tried to expose FBI abuse, you attacked him. When he wrote a memo based on classified information showing FISA court violations, you called it irresponsible. You said he was endangering national security, and Bongino was almost shouting now. So leaking to damage Republicans is fine, but exposing FBI corruption is dangerous. That is not principle. That is partisanship. You leak when it helps Democrats, and you attack leaks when they hurt Democrats. You are a hypocrite." And Schiff tried to regain composure with talk about protecting sources. Bongino's laugh was harsh as he mocked the idea of protecting sources and methods. You leaked sources and methods constantly. You just leaked the ones that fit your narrative. You said the Carter Page FISA warrant was all proper. Then we found out FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith altered evidence to get that warrant. The IG found 17 significant errors, but you defended it all. You leaked to protect it because it served your agenda. He leaned forward again, with his voice dropping slightly, but remaining no less intense. I was in law enforcement, and we had rules. We did not leak evidence or selectively release information to prejudice cases. We did not violate classified protocols for political advantage. You did all of that, and you never faced accountability. He delivered his final point with maximum contempt. And now you want to lecture me about spreading misinformation. You leaked classified information for 3 years to spread the Russia hoax. You are a leaker and a liar, and you call me dangerous. Get out of here with that hypocrisy. You leaked classified info for years and violated your oath with no consequences. Now you want to silence truth-tellers, so share this video. Bongino pulled out another folder, and this one made him visibly angry. Just holding it made him furious as he cited October 2020. Hunter Biden's laptop story was in the New York Post. There were emails showing corruption and photos as evidence, and he asked what the congressman did. He played a video clip of Schiff on CNN saying the origins were from the Kremlin. Schiff called it classic textbook Soviet-style disinformation. Bongino's voice was shaking with rage as he accused Schiff of calling it Russian disinformation. You went on every network you could find and said it was a Russian operation. You organized 51 intelligence officials to sign a letter saying it had the hallmarks of disinformation. You got Twitter to censor the New York Post and Facebook to suppress the story. You did this 3 weeks before a presidential election, and he slammed his hand on the podium. And it was real. The laptop was real. The FBI had it since December 2019 and knew it was real. The repair shop owner confirmed Hunter dropped it off, and the emails have been verified. Even the New York Times and Washington Post now admit it is real. Bongino was pacing now, too agitated to stand still. You lied about Russian disinformation to interfere in an election. You censored a true story about Biden corruption. That is election interference, and exactly what you accused Trump of doing. Schiff tried to defend himself by saying he couldn't have known it was authentic. Bongino was incredulous, saying you were the Intelligence Committee chairman. You could have asked the FBI because they had held it for 10 months. They knew it was real, so either you asked and lied or didn't ask. Which is it? Are you a liar or simply incompetent? He pulled out polling data showing that if voters had known about Hunter Biden's laptop, things would be different. Enough people would have changed their vote to swing the election. You interfered in a presidential election by calling a true story Russian disinformation. You got it censored 3 weeks before voting. Bongino's voice rose to a shout, noting Schiff never apologized for saying he was wrong. You never admitted you helped censor a true story and just moved on because you never face consequences. He pointed at Schiff accusingly regarding the 51 former intelligence officials. You knew that letter would be used to censor the story. You wanted it censored because it hurt Biden, so you lied. You called it Russian disinformation when you had no evidence. Just like the Russia collusion hoax. You just lie, and the media repeats it. Schiff attempted to explain that the letter said it had hallmarks, not that it definitively was disinformation. Bongino was having none of it, reminding him he went on CNN and called it disinformation. You did not say might be or has hallmarks. You said it was Russian disinformation. You said it was a direct quote, and every media outlet ran with it. Twitter censored the post, and the largest newspaper in New York was banned from Twitter. They were banned for reporting a true story because you lied. His intensity reached a new peak as he said what really kills him. You spent 3 years spreading actual disinformation about Trump-Russia collusion. Then, when a real story about real Biden corruption comes out, you call it disinformation. You are like a guilty criminal calling the cops corrupt. It is projection, and everything you accuse others of, you have done yourself. He delivered his final assessment with pure contempt. And you want to decide what constitutes misinformation. You want me deplatformed, but you have been wrong about everything. Everything you said was misinformation turned out to be true. Everything you said was true turned out to be lies. Yet you believe you should be the arbiter of truth. That is insane to think you called a real laptop Russian disinformation and got it censored. You interfered in an election, and the laptop was real, but you never apologized. Comment if you remember. And Bongino grabbed another folder. This one had yellow tabs all over it. First impeachment regarding Ukraine, and you are the Intelligence Committee chairman. You are supposed to present facts, but instead, you read a fake version of Trump's phone call. You made it up in an official congressional hearing under oath. He played the video of Schiff at the hearing dramatically reading his parody version. It bore no resemblance to the actual transcript and sounded like a mob shakedown. When it finished, Bongino just stared at Schiff in disbelief. What was that? And in what universe is it appropriate to fabricate a presidential phone call? Schiff tried to explain it was satire and that he had said it was the essence of the call. Bongino's voice hit a new level of incredulity, screaming, "Satire? That is not Saturday Night Live. That is Congress. You are under oath, and you are the Intelligence Committee chairman. You are presenting what is supposed to be evidence, and you made up a completely fake version." He pulled out reactions from confused witnesses who thought Schiff was reading the actual call. People watching thought that was real, and your own colleagues asked if that was the transcript. You created confusion deliberately, which is fraud. Bongino's cop background came through as he said if he had done that, he would be fired. If I had fabricated evidence in court as a detective, I would have been prosecuted. If a prosecutor made up fake evidence like you did, they would be disbarred. But you did it in Congress during an impeachment and faced zero consequences. He slammed the transcript on his podium, saying the real call was already public. People could read it themselves, but you made up a fake version anyway. You did it to prejudice the proceedings and make it sound worse than it was. That is deception, and that is lying. Schiff tried to claim everyone knew it wasn't the real call. Bongino was apoplectic, saying your media allies reported it like it was real. CNN ran clips without clarifying it was your made-up version. People absolutely thought that was what Trump said. You knew that would happen because you are a lawyer. You know exactly what you were doing. His voice dropped to angry intensity, noting this was an impeachment. You were trying to remove a sitting president, and you fabricated evidence. In any court in America, that would be grounds for sanctions or prosecution. But in Congress, nothing happened, and you faced no accountability. This guy calls me a conspiracy theorist, yet he literally made up a conspiracy. You fabricated evidence to support it, and I am the problem? The hypocrisy is staggering to have made up a fake presidential phone call. You called it parody when caught, and faced no consequences. Share this fraud, and Bongino moved to his next attack with visible anger. Carter Page FISA warrants were next on the list. You said they were all proper, and attacked Devin Nunes for exposing problems. You said the Nunes memo was partisan and misleading. Remember all that, asking as Schiff nodded wearily. Nunes was right. Bongino shouted. Inspector General Horowitz found 17 significant errors and omissions in those FISA applications. FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith pleaded guilty to altering an email to get the warrant. That is fraud, and that is a crime. But you defended it all. He pulled out the IG report to read what Horowitz found. The FBI used the Steele dossier, political opposition research paid for by Hillary Clinton, as evidence. They knew it was uncorroborated. They knew the primary source disavowed the information. They hid exculpatory evidence from the FISA court. They altered documents and lied to federal judges. Bongino's intensity was building again as he addressed Schiff. You, as Intelligence Committee Chairman, defended this and said the process was proper. You attacked anyone who questioned it. You protected FBI officials who lied to courts. Schiff tried to defend the general FISA process while acknowledging some problems. Some problems? Bongino was incredulous. They altered evidence and committed fraud on a federal court. They spied on an American citizen based on political opposition research. And you call that merely some problems? He pulled out Schiff's own words attacking the Nunes memo. You said releasing this memo would endanger national security and was misleading. You fought its release, and then the IG report came out. It proved Nunes was right about everything. Bongino's voice was shaking with rage. You are supposed to provide oversight of the FBI, but instead, you protected them. You attacked the whistleblowers and defended the corrupt officials. You chose the deep state over the Constitution. I was in federal law enforcement, and we did not lie to judges. We did not alter evidence, because if we had, we would go to prison. But the FBI does it, and you defend them, which is corruption. That is covering up crimes. And he leaned forward menacingly. And the worst part is you knew. You had access to the same information Nunes had. You saw the FISA abuses, but you covered it up. You did it because it served your Russia collusion narrative. You protected FBI corruption to advance a political hoax. That is not oversight. That is complicity. The FBI lied to courts, altered evidence, and spied on an American. Schiff defended them, attacked whistleblowers, and covered up crimes. Share this, and Bongino's final prepared attack was the most personal. And now, after lying for years and being wrong about everything, you want to censor people. His voice was incredulous and furious simultaneously. You call for me to be deplatformed and pressure big tech to silence conservatives. You want to decide what constitutes misinformation. He started counting on his fingers, rapid fire. Russia collusion. You were wrong and lied. Hunter laptop. You were wrong and lied. FISA abuse. You were wrong and covered it up. Ukraine call. You fabricated it, but you should decide what is true. Schiff tried to respond with talk about protecting democracy from dangerous misinformation. Protecting democracy by censoring speech is Orwellian. Bongino cut him off. You lied for 3 years and faced no consequences, but you want me silenced for telling the truth and exposing your lies. His voice rose to a shout. I am a First Amendment absolutist who protected the Constitution as Secret Service. Free speech means protecting speech you disagree with. But you want the government deciding what people can say, which is tyranny. He pulled out quotes of Schiff calling for deplatforming. He cited calls for more content moderation and fact-checking that always seemed to target conservatives. You define misinformation as anything that disagrees with your narrative. Hunter laptop was true, but you called it misinformation. Russia collusion was false, but you spread it for years. You have it backwards. Everything you call misinformation turns out to be true. Everything you call true turns out to be lies. Bongino's final point was delivered with maximum passion. I was a cop, and a Secret Service agent. I defended the Constitution and protected presidents I disagreed with. That is what the job demands. It demands honor, integrity, and truth. But you have shown none of that. You lie, you leak, you fabricate, and you cover up. And when people expose you, you call for them to be silenced. That is not protecting democracy. That is ending it. Lied about everything, was wrong about everything, and now wants to censor truth-tellers. Comment tyrant if you see it. And Bongino stood up from his podium. He was too worked up to sit anymore, and had been building toward this moment. Let me summarize what we have established here, Congressman. I think everyone watching needs to understand who Adam Schiff really is. He started pacing with that Queen's energy fully unleashed. For 3 years, you told the American people you had evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. You went on every network and looked into cameras. You said, "I have seen more than circumstantial evidence," over and over again. Then Mueller investigates with $30 million, 40 FBI agents, and 19 lawyers. And he finds nothing, no collusion, no conspiracy, and no coordination. You lied for 3 years to the American people about the most serious allegation possible. You have never apologized or admitted you were wrong. You just moved to the next lie. He counted on his fingers as he continued. You leaked classified information repeatedly for years and violated your oath. You compromised sensitive intelligence all for CNN hits and to damage political opponents. I was Secret Service, and if I had done that, I would be in federal prison. But you faced no consequences, just more media appearances. Third finger up. Hunter Biden laptop was a real story with real evidence. You called it Russian disinformation and organized 51 intelligence officials to provide cover. You got it censored 3 weeks before a presidential election. That is election interference and exactly what you accused Trump of doing. The laptop was real, and the FBI knew it. You either knew and lied or spoke without knowing. Either way, it is disqualifying. Fourth finger, you fabricated a presidential phone call with made-up quotes. You made up dialogue in an impeachment hearing under oath as Intelligence Committee Chairman. When caught, you called it parody, but that is not parody. That is fraud. And any prosecutor who did that would be disbarred. You faced nothing. Fifth finger, FISA abuse involved the FBI lying to federal courts. They altered evidence, committed fraud, and spied on Americans based on opposition research. You defended them and attacked the whistleblowers while protecting corrupt officials. You covered up crimes because it served your Russia hoax narrative. He held up his other hand and said, "And now you want to censor. You call for people like me to be deplatformed. You pressure big tech to silence conservatives and want to decide what constitutes misinformation. You, the guy who has been wrong about everything and lied about everything, you think you should be the arbiter of truth. That is crazy." And Bongino walked closer to Schiff's podium. His intensity was at maximum. You called me a conspiracy theorist and said I spread dangerous misinformation. You suggested I should be silenced. So let me tell you who I am versus who you are. His voice got emotional, and that Queen's accent became thick with passion. I grew up in Queens in a working-class family. My mother worked at the post office, and my father was a New York City union worker. We didn't have connections, and we didn't have money. We had work ethic, and I became an NYPD cop. I walked a beat and investigated real crimes. I dealt with real criminals, not political opponents. He pointed at himself and said, "Then I joined the Secret Service." You know what that means? It means I took an oath to protect the president. I protected President Bush, and I protected President Obama. I would have died for either of them. Not because I agreed with their policies, I disagreed with Obama on almost everything. But that doesn't matter, because the oath matters. The Constitution matters, and country comes over party. His voice rose again as he described standing post in the freezing cold. I worked 18-hour days and missed my kids' birthdays. I missed holidays because that is what service means. Real service, not the fake service you politicians talk about. It means actually putting yourself in danger and actually sacrificing. It means actually meaning your oath. He pointed at Schiff, asking what he had sacrificed. You went to Stanford and Harvard Law and have been in Congress for 20 years. You have never had a real job. You never investigated a real crime and never faced real danger. You have spent decades in Washington playing games, lying, leaking, fabricating, and covering up. It was all for political advantage and for your career. Bongino's voice was shaking with emotion. Now I protected President Obama even though I thought his policies were destroying America. You know why? Because that is what honor demands and integrity requires. That is what country over party means. But you have put party over country every single time. You have lied to damage Republicans and leaked to help Democrats. You have fabricated evidence in impeachment and covered up FBI corruption. Every decision is driven by politics, not truth or justice. He walked back toward his podium but turned for his final assault. So, when you call me a conspiracy theorist or dangerous, when you say I should be silenced, that tells me one thing. I'm doing something right. Because if a lying, leaking, fabricating, covering up politician like you dislikes my words, I must be telling the truth. His final line was delivered with absolute conviction. You spent 3 years lying about Russia and leaked classified information. You called a real laptop Russian disinformation and fabricated a presidential phone call. You covered up FBI crimes and called for Americans to be censored. And you have faced no consequences for any of it. But you call me dangerous. He shook his head in disgust. We are done here. You are a liar, a leaker, and a fraud. And everyone watching knows it now. You attacked me thinking you would intimidate me. But I am a cop from Queens who protected presidents. I do not get intimidated, especially not by someone like you. Bongino picked up all his folders, turned his back on Schiff, and walked off the stage. The audience erupted, half of them standing and cheering, the other half sitting in shocked silence. Schiff sat at his podium, unable to respond, his smooth politician facade completely shattered. Everything Bongino had thrown at him was documented. Video clips of Schiff's own words, Mueller report findings, and IG reports were all presented. All of it was undeniable. Schiff had called Bongino a conspiracy theorist and demanded a debate. He had gotten his wish, and he had been destroyed by his own record. The video went viral within minutes. Someone had recorded the entire confrontation and uploaded it before Schiff even left the venue. Within 3 hours, it had 12 million views. Within 24 hours, it had 43 million views. Within a week, it became one of the most watched political confrontations in Internet history, with over 90 million views. What made it spread so explosively wasn't just Bongino's passion or the dramatic confrontation. It was that everything he accused Schiff of was backed by evidence. The video clips of Schiff claiming to have evidence of collusion were followed by the Mueller report finding nothing. The timeline of classified meetings was followed by leaks. The clip of Schiff calling the laptop Russian disinformation appeared next to headlines from liberal outlets, now admitting it was real. The footage of him fabricating the Trump phone call was shown. All documented, all undeniable. "Let me finish" became an instant meme. That moment when Bongino had cut off Schiff's attempts at smooth politician evasion became legendary. People made remixes of it and used it in response to politicians trying to dodge questions. They applied it to any situation where someone needed to stop the nonsense and hear the truth. The phrase, "You lied," in Bongino's Queen's accent became another viral moment. Clips of him shouting it at Schiff got millions of views on their own. People used it in response to politicians making claims that contradicted their previous statements. It became shorthand for calling out documented dishonesty. But perhaps most significantly, the confrontation created a template for holding politicians accountable. It went beyond the typical left-right partisan divide. Bongino had not just disagreed with Schiff's policies. He had systematically documented Schiff's lies, presented video evidence, contrasted them with the truth, and demanded accountability. That methodical approach resonated even with people who didn't necessarily agree with Bongino's politics. Conservative media played the debate on endless loops, but focused on the specific lies. Fox News ran segments where they fact-checked each of Bongino's claims and found them accurate. They brought on legal experts to discuss whether Schiff's leaking should result in prosecution. They interviewed former intelligence officials about the damage caused by selective leaking of classified information. The coverage wasn't just "Bongino owns Schiff." It was, "Look at this documented pattern of dishonesty." Liberal media tried to defend Schiff but struggled because Bongino had been so thorough with evidence. CNN and MSNBC couldn't deny that Schiff had claimed to have evidence of collusion that Mueller never found. They couldn't deny that he had called the laptop Russian disinformation when it turned out to be real. They couldn't deny he had read a fabricated version of the Trump call. The best they could do was argue that Schiff had been operating in good faith. But that defense fell apart when confronted with the 3-year timeline of him making the same claims. Some liberal commentators tried attacking Bongino's style, calling him bombastic and unprofessional. But those attacks backfired because the video showed Schiff trying to use smooth politician language to dodge accountability. Bongino demanded direct answers, which viewers appreciated. Most viewers found Bongino's passion more authentic than Schiff's polish. This was especially true when Bongino's claims were backed by evidence. The impact on Schiff personally was devastating and immediate. Within 48 hours of the video going viral, his favorability ratings dropped 17 points nationally. More importantly, Democrats in competitive districts began openly distancing themselves from him. Members who had relied on Schiff's intelligence briefings during the Russia investigation started suggesting maybe he had been overly partisan. Congressional colleagues who had backed his impeachment efforts grew quiet when asked if they still supported his conduct. Schiff tried to do damage control through friendly media interviews. However, each appearance just generated more viral clips of him trying to defend indefensible positions. When asked directly if he still stood by his claims of having evidence of collusion, he gave lawyerly non-answers. When asked about the Hunter Biden laptop, he would try to change subjects. When pressed on the fabricated phone call, he insisted it was clearly satire. 3 months after the debate, Schiff's committee chairmanship came under pressure from within his own party. Democrats facing tough re-election campaigns didn't want to be associated with someone who had become a symbol of partisan dishonesty. Some openly suggested he should step down from the position. Others just stopped defending him when Republicans attacked. Bongino's platform exploded in the wake of the event. His podcast downloads doubled within a month of the debate. His radio show expanded to new markets, and Fox News increased his appearances. A publisher offered him a new book deal, and speaking fees went up significantly. But more than just his personal success, Bongino had proven something important. He proved that politicians who lie can be held accountable if someone bothers to document their lies. The Bongino method became a real thing. It meant compiling video evidence of politicians making claims and documenting when those claims turned out false. It meant presenting it systematically rather than just making accusations. Other conservative commentators started using the approach. Progressive commentators started doing it too, going after Republican politicians with documented contradictions. The debate had elevated the standard for political accountability in a way that transcended partisan lines. 6 months after the confrontation, Schiff announced he wouldn't seek his committee chairmanship again. He framed it as wanting to focus on other priorities, but everyone understood the real message. Bongino had damaged his credibility so severely that even his own party didn't want him in that position. The video of him being unable to defend his 3 years of collusion claims was damning. He was unable to explain his laptop lies or justify his phone call fabrication. It had become a permanent record of his dishonesty that he couldn't escape. 1 year later, Schiff was still in Congress, but notably quieter. He avoided contentious media appearances and stopped making bold claims about investigations. He seemed aware that if he made strong accusations now, someone would immediately compile video of his previous accusations. Bongino had created a permanent record of Schiff's dishonesty that would follow him for the rest of his political career. This wasn't a debate between political ideologies or policy preferences. This was a former cop with receipts confronting a career politician who had spent years lying. Dan Bongino had prepared for this confrontation with the same intensity he brought to protecting presidents. It was comprehensive and detailed, leaving nothing to chance. Every accusation was backed by video evidence. Every claim of lying was supported by Schiff's own words, contrasted with the truth that emerged later. The Mueller report, Inspector General reports, and media reports confirming the laptop were all used. All of it was organized, ready to present, and impossible to dismiss. But preparation alone wasn't enough to secure the win. What made the confrontation so powerful was Bongino's authentic passion. That working-class queen's intensity came from genuinely believing that Schiff's lies had damaged the country. The emotion in his voice when talking about protecting Obama was not performed. That was real conviction about what service means. The anger about FISA abuse wasn't manufactured either. That was a former federal agent genuinely outraged by officials lying to courts. Adam Schiff had fundamentally misread his opponent. He thought Bongino was just another talk radio loudmouth who could be outsmarted with Harvard credentials. He thought his smooth politician routine would make him look measured, while Bongino looked unhinged. He thought calling Bongino a conspiracy theorist would put him on the defensive. Instead, Bongino turned every attack back on Schiff with documentation. You call me a conspiracy theorist, but you pushed the Russia hoax for 3 years. You call me dangerous, but you leaked classified information. You mentioned misinformation, but you called a real laptop Russian disinformation. Every accusation became a boomerang that hit Schiff harder than the original throw. The Secret Service background gave Bongino moral authority that Schiff couldn't match. When Bongino talked about protecting Obama with his life, it demonstrated a kind of integrity Schiff lacked. It showed a commitment that Schiff's career simply couldn't compete with. When Bongino talked about law enforcement officers leaking, he was speaking from actual experience. Most importantly, Bongino had proven something essential about political accountability in the modern media age. You cannot out-talk the truth when someone has video evidence of you lying. Schiff's polished presentation style meant nothing when confronted with clips of his own words. His careful lawyer language couldn't dodge direct questions when someone refused to accept non-answers. His congressional credentials didn't impress when compared to actually protecting presidents. The confrontation became a template that others started following. Document the lies, present the evidence, and demand accountability. Don't accept evasion, just demand the truth. It was simple but powerful. And it worked because Bongino had actually done the work of compiling years of evidence. If you think politicians should be held accountable for documented lies, share this story. If you believe a Secret Service agent has earned the right to call out a dishonest congressman, comment liar. Respond to Schiff if you agree. If you think someone who claimed to have evidence of collusion that Mueller couldn't find should face consequences, share this. Share this with everyone who remembers the Russia hoax. Dan Bongino proved that when you bring receipts and passion, you win. Even the smoothest politician can't escape their own record when confronted with refusal to back down.